Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Me? Well, apparently I'm lacking in vitamin D. The initial results of my blood tests have come back, and it appears I'm not getting enough sunshine on my body. Now, it is the depths of winter, and I do live like a hermit. To give you an example, I've not actually left the house since Sunday. But I do have some vitamin D tablets on order, and I'm also hoping to get a year's worth of sunshine during my week in Las Vegas. And speaking of Las Vegas, we're looking ahead to the ConExpo show, not once but twice on today's show. Oh, and just before we get started properly, I just want to say a very quick thank you to all those that joined me over on my Talk Tuesday Instagram live show yesterday. An hour and 10 minutes talking about grandfather rights. I'm not done yet, which, as I'm sure you would agree, is a very UK-specific issue. And yet we had viewers from the US, Australia, Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, and India. Quite what they made of it all, I have absolutely no idea. But they stuck around, so I can only assume they either found it interesting or about as baffling and frustrating as we do. Just quickly on the subject of grandfather rights. I had a comment in this morning over on LinkedIn from a crane operator called Patrick Morby. Patrick, if you're watching, thank you for being here, but also thank you very much indeed for your comment. I'm going to paraphrase it, but here is roughly what, here is roughly what Patrick had to say. As operators, we help the next generation into this game, and we have done for years. Yet now we are not qualified enough because of a money-making scheme to squeeze the old operators out and bring in operators who have no site experience but have the paperwork. It's a joke. It is a joke, Patrick, only no one is laughing. And I'm going to revisit this subject probably at quite some length after the show in our Craic session after the show has ended. So without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, which I've remembered again, and get this show on the road. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I'm your host, Mark Anthony. It is Wednesday, the 1st of February. The 1st of February already. And as that remarkably persistent guy just said, welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony. In today's show, an Israeli bridge collapse has been caught on camera. Not for the squeamish. We're looking back at ConExpo 2020, and we're looking ahead to ConExpo 2023 with Wacker Neuson. Plus, Caterpillar offers some advice on battery maintenance. We're going to get to all of that in just a second. But first, let's see who, among the rich and the shameless, will be celebrating a birthday on this day of days. Happy birthday! And it's many happy returns to the Scottish mathematician John Napier, the inventor of logarithms. He very nearly ruined my school years with those bloody logarithmic tables. Happy birthday also to director John Ford, Gone with the Wind actor Clark Gable, to the voice of Wallace from Wallace and Gromit actor Peter Sallis, and to Super Freak singer Rick James, to footballer Rob Lee, the recently departed Lisa Marie Presley, Dexter actor Michael C. Hall, Welsh rugger bugger Gavin Henson, and to floppy-haired singer Harry Styles. Many happy returns to them, one and all. Now, before we get started, here's a very quick reminder of our question of the day. Now, I am going to press the button and get the show rolling in a second. Those of you that are here on a regular basis will recall that Steve Williamson, superstar Steve Williamson, tried to convince us all that spicy banana pizza was a thing. I thought he was a lunatic, still inclined to believe that, and even more so. Our question of the day: what is the ultimate breakfast? Steve Williamson's response: cold takeaway curry. A, you must have the constitution of an ox, and B, I pity those that live and work nearby you. That's all I can say. Now, I do have to get this show properly underway, so here we go. Now, the way these things normally work is that I do a bit of an introduction and then I show you a thing. In this instance, I think it's probably best if I just show you the thing. That was the moment an Israeli bridge collapsed during its demolition. Local newspaper reports say that the operators of the two machines seen falling from the bridge were taken to hospital. So far, there's no details on the extent of their injuries. Only one of the four machines pictured so far has actually been removed. The others are all still in place while an investigation gets underway. We'll bring you more just as soon as we can get it. But if you'd like to read more about that incident, I've posted a link, something I thought I'd never do. It's actually a link to an article in the Daily Mail. I'll wash my mouth out after I said that, but yeah, there's an article on the Daily Mail where you can read more about that bridge collapse in Israel. As our friend Mick Norton has just said, A Bridge Too Far. Yes, and I remember the movie as well. Now, there has been much talk here on the Breakfast Show about the forthcoming ConExpo show that is now just a mere 37 days away. Now, I could try to explain why ConExpo is such a cause for excitement and anticipation, but instead, I thought I'd just show you what it looked like in 2020. See, now you can see why we're all so excited. For me, ConExpo 2023 will basically close the circle. When I went to ConExpo in 2020, I was the owner of a magazine and I spent pretty much all my time writing about plant and equipment. But COVID broke while we were at the show, and I returned to find that I was unable to produce the magazine that I'd built up over 8 or more years. But I was still determined to deliver the news and information to our audience, and I decided that live streaming was the way forward. Although I thought it would be a temporary measure at the time, I never went back to magazine publishing. And for those first tentative steps on the live streaming path are what ultimately spawned the very show you're watching now. Do I have any regrets? Not one. I've gone from sending a magazine to a silent readership to speaking directly to those within the industry. Through necessity, we have carved ourselves a little niche. As far as I'm aware, we're still the only regular live stream dedicated to all things demolition and construction. When I'm being flippant, I always think that no one else is stupid enough to have followed our lead. But the truth is, I don't think anybody else has the commitment. Most of the magazines in this sector sit on the sidelines merely to extract advertising money from the very industry they claim to support. Meanwhile, we are talking directly to the people in the industry and at the industry's sharp edge as well. So I'm going back to Las Vegas partly because I love the city. I'm going to see the latest equipment. I'm going to catch up with friends and colleagues from within the industry. But most of all, I'm going back to say thank you for setting me on a brand new path. Just a very quick comment from Gary Muirhead. Morning, Gary. I'm sure Cat will be the king at ConExpo, just like Lee Perry is at Bauma. Yes. The exhibitors that are in their own backyard, obviously Liebherr being German, Austrian, over that way. Obviously, their big show is Bauma, and Caterpillar in their own backyard in America. This is very much their show. Although I'm pretty sure that Case and John Deere will be giving them a run for their money. Now, speaking of ConExpo, as we just were, if you were here yesterday, you may recall that we brought you a very quick snapshot of what the fine folks at Wacker Neuson have in store for the show. Well, they obviously have some very big plans because they've now released a second ConExpo preview film. And we've got it for you.
Hey, are you excited for ConExpo 2023? Because we sure are. Here's one of the many things Wacker Neuson will have on display at the show.
My name is Jessica Leib. I'm the district sales manager for what we call the Chesapeake District, which covers Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware, and I've been here for 4 years. I am particularly excited in the expansion of our UTL loader line. The rollout of the SM100 has been really exciting for us. We learned that we just reached our 1,000th unit, and expanding that into the smaller gas unit, the SM60 and larger SM120, I think is going to create wonderful opportunities for our customers.
Check out our expanded UTL lineup on display at ConExpo 2023, March 14th through the 18th in Las Vegas, Nevada.
I think I'm going to have to allow quite a bit of time for my visit to the Wacker Neuson stand.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
And we're going to play out today with a look at batteries. But these are not the batteries from some newfangled electric machine. These are the batteries in a good old-fashioned diesel machine. And this is Caterpillar's advice on how to take care of them.
Today, we're going to look at how to inspect and clean your battery. Before you get started though, check your operation and maintenance manual for proper safety procedures and always wear appropriate personal protective equipment. Now, first off, you'll want to look for cracks or electrolyte leaks on the battery box. Next, check the hold down. Keep in mind that if it's too tight, it'll damage the case. Also, look for signs of overcharging, like electrolyte pooling on top or leaking down the sides. Next up, see if the terminals are secure. Your CAT dealer can tell you about proper torque values. And remember, every 1,000 hours, you'll need to check the battery's fluid level. To do this, just screw off the cap and look inside. If it's low, add distilled water till the internal lead plates are submerged. To clean your battery, start by getting rid of dirt and debris. But don't use compressed air. It causes static electricity, which could cause an explosion. Disconnect the cables, positive first. Next, use a baking soda or ammonia solution to clean the battery. Remove the rest of the cleaning solution from the battery. If there's corrosion on the posts, use a small bristle brush. And if it's not coming all the way off, try fine grit sandpaper. Finally, reassemble the terminals to the posts and apply a bit of cat dielectric grease over the connections if needed. For more information and support, contact your cat dealer, and always check your operation and maintenance manual for specific instruction and safety procedures.
Just think, there will come a time when fitters and operators won't even know what distilled water is and what it was for, and who think a terminal is where a bus stops. Yeah, they have no idea what they're missing. Now, just going to go very quickly back into the chat. Steve Williamson says, I've stopped buying magazines just because I see it all on social media. It's good to see the face behind all the media and interact. Glad to hear it. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to come back to this in a bit more depth in just a second. But Mick Norton says, in real terms, what will ConExpo do for the ailing UK economy? Showcasing for manufacturers, yes, but what else? In truth, there aren't that many UK exhibitors going to be there. JCB are going to be there in some sense, I think, predominantly with their showcasing their hydrogen combustion engine, but I don't think there's going to be that many British manufacturers there. So in direct terms, what will it do? Not a great deal. But all these things are, and I'll come back to this because I do think, I mean, obviously last time I was there, there was an awful large British contingent of visitors over there. And if they are investing over there, they're investing to actually make money here. And as we've said before, and I can never remember the number, if you spend £1 in the, if you invest £1 in the UK construction industry, I think the UK economy gets like £1.68 back. So it swings and roundabouts, but yeah. And I'm using that as my excuse to go, so don't spoil it now. So I need to press one of these because I'm going to our after show chat today is going to be slightly different because it's going to be on a single subject once I've rattled through the chat. So let me roll this first.
Sorry to interrupt the guy with the funny glasses, but if you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button as it helps our channel. Or better still, share this video with a friend or a colleague. Thank you. Right, back to Beardy.
Right, that pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into the chat to see what you're all saying today. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe, look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Have a great day, and thanks for watching. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I'll see you after this for the Craic, during which we're going to be talking almost exclusively about the very touchy subject of grandfather rights. If that sounds like something that might float your boat, stick around after this. Morning, gang. How are we all this morning? I hope we're all fit and well. I'm going to rattle through the chat because, as I say, I do want to get on to something else. Which I've got on standby for you all. Steve Williamson was first off the mark this morning. He is becoming a show regular. That time we actually had you on the show, I think, Steve. Next time you've got a spare morning, let me know and we'll hook that up. It'd be lovely to get you actually on the show. Gary Muirhead, who has been here since the beginning, and I fear will be here until the bitter end. And for that, Gary, I can only apologise. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Mr. Drew is in the house as well. What are all those symbols? I don't know. They look Las Vegas-ish, possibly? I don't know. Not entirely sure. In actual fact, I'll tell you what, because I'm going to be reading a lot, let's do away with the... oh, man alive, that light's bright. That light is very bright. Oh, it's like somebody's just lifted the veil from my eyes. That isn't Las Vegas. That is cars and trucks, apparently. So my apologies, Nick, but good morning to you. Our Facebook user, which is almost certainly Gary Major, is here. Good morning, Mark, and good morning to you as well. Peter Ferguson is here as well. Good day to you and Mark. I'm not including in the all. Let's have a look. Just had a message come in that I can't actually respond to. Ken Hatter is here as well. Morning, Ken. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Another mixed bag of weather down in Welsh Wales. Mark Whiting is here as well. Morning, Mark. Al Grierson is a day early because, as we know, Thursdays are World Al Grierson Day. But morning, Al. Thank you for joining us from Luxembourg. My question of the day, and I really wish I hadn't asked this, what is the ultimate breakfast? Personally, I think the full English takes a bit of beating, although my go-to generally, the bacon roll. The bacon roll. God had a good day the day he came up with a bacon roll, but no, bacon rolls are not good enough for Steve Williamson, who would rather have a cold takeaway curry. I need to ask this: how does that actually work? Do you order extra, or are you talking about leftovers here, Steve? Because frankly, in my house, there are no leftovers from a takeaway curry. It's gone. The dogs sit there with their tongues hanging out, and they don't get a look in. Everything is gone. So, are you ordering extra chicken tikka masala for your breakfast? I think we need to know. Gary Muirhead. Eggs Benedict we had in New York. Oh, Eggs Benedict. What a fine invention. What a fine invention that is. And if you're gonna have it anywhere, have it in New York. I totally agree. Demo driver breakfast consists of Red Bull and 10 cigarettes. Yes, it does. Ken Hatcher says breakfast down Wood Lane Walk Garden Centre. I will have to take your word for that. Best breakfast when on the go is a bacon and egg doubler on a roll. Not entirely sure what a doubler is, but it sounds delicious. Frankly, the ideal breakfast contains fried things, as far as I'm concerned. Not entirely bothered what it is, but fried things. That's me happy. If you want to find out more about that Israeli bridge collapse, you can do so in the Daily Mail. Don't bother reading the bit down the edge because, as we know, it's all made up, but the actual details of the accident are there, and you can go and take a look at that. Mick Norton's here as well. Morning, Mick. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I'm sure you're going to have something to say about what happens in just a moment. I always thought that might happen on bridge demos. Doesn't happen very often, but it does happen, I'm afraid. ConExpo, Steve Williamson cannot wait. I reckon Steve's already got his bag packed, if I'm being completely honest. I can only assume that bridge in Israel was in a desperate state before demo started. Don't know. The article that we pulled that from doesn't make any distinction about that, although given the fact that Israel has been basically at war for about 3,000 years, yeah, I would imagine it probably was. Let's have a look. Cat will be the king of ConExpo. Totally agree. Although Ken says when I've been, Cat Case and John Deere all about the same size. They are. But it's a cat show. Really it is. John Paul Fitzmaurice is here as well. Morning, John. Thank you very much indeed for joining us from the world of firewood. I found this very interesting, and frankly, you're not alone in this, Steve. And I realise Nick Drew is here, and I realise Nick works for a magazine, and it's a magazine that I actually buy. So I'm kind of hedging my bets here a bit. But I've stopped buying magazines because I see it all on social media. It's good to see the face behind all the media and interact. And that's been one of the most refreshing things about this. I've mentioned the fact that this show has basically come full circle when we get back to ConExpo, because that is basically where this began. It wasn't a choice. It wasn't a decision. It was basically forced upon me. But I have no regrets about it whatsoever. And I do. I mean, I still do consult with manufacturers and demolition companies as well about their marketing strategies, and it is becoming harder and harder and harder to convince them to advertise in magazines. Partly because we have people like Steve who are not buying the magazines anymore, but also because of the lack of measurability. For example, we did our live stream over on Instagram yesterday. We broadcast on our channel, which has got 150,000 plus followers. But I can tell you, by the time we'd finished, there'd been 1,700 and some people actually tuned in. We had comments from a good deal of them. There was real interaction, and I could prove that. I could actually press a button and show you exactly who took part and what they took part in. And a magazine can't do that. So in advertising terms, if you're a marketing agency, or even if you're just a marketing department within a demolition or a construction company or a construction equipment manufacturer, it's very, very hard to prove the worth of magazines these days. Yeah, in real terms, what will ConExpo do for the ailing UK economy? Showcasing for manufacturers, yes, but what else? Directly, not a great deal. Not a great deal. ConExpo is slightly, it's not weird. Bauma is a German show in Germany, but is truly international. When I was there, I was rubbing shoulders with Americans and Australians and New Zealanders and lots of people from all over the world. You go to ConExpo, and the same could be said of Intermat in France, but you go to ConExpo and 99.9% of the people there are pretty much from North America, or certainly in my experience they've been from North America. So there's two things. I think if they always say if the US economy catches cold, we sneeze. No, the other way around. If the US economy sneezes, we catch a cold. So we will be looking to ConExpo as some sort of indicator of more global, a global indication of current market perception, I guess, and market confidence. There won't be that many British manufacturers there selling their wares, so there's not going to be any direct kickback. But those people that do actually make the journey from the UK and Ireland to ConExpo, it's going to cost them a couple of £1,000 to do it. You're not going to do that. Generally, you're not going to do that just for fun. You're going either with a shopping list, or you're going to see what your shopping list should comprise of. And ultimately, that will have benefit because all of that equipment that is seen at ConExpo and is then purchased here in the UK will be done through a local dealer, and therefore the economy. It's not direct. And to be perfectly honest, I mean, exhibitions, a bit like magazines in some ways. You look at a Hillhead exhibition. Somebody goes along to Hillhead and sees, let's say, a crusher. They're not in the market for a crusher right now, but they see a crusher that's very impressive and everything else. And then 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the line, they have a need for a crusher. And they think, where did I see that really cool Hillhead? They go back through their catalogue, online probably, and that's where it comes from. And I think ConExpo will be exactly the same. Will it have an immediate impact? No, it will not. But some of the equipment that will be seen there will be making its way. I mean, and particularly the American manufacturers, so the John Deeres, the Cases, and the Caterpillars of this world. Chances are, if they're launching anything new, that will be readily available from then in the US. We may not get it for another 6 months, a year, maybe. I mean, look at Doosan, and I realise Doosan are not an American company, but Doosan in North America have got a dozer. We can't get it here at the moment. I'd like to think it will come, and it was one of my predictions of the year, but I would like to think it will come. So it's a bit of a long drawn out story, but there you are. Moral Sock over, which is a fantastic name, over on YouTube has joined us. Thank you very much indeed for being here. As a newcomer, you get, I've pressed the wrong button, you get some welcome confetti just to welcome you to the gang. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Not entirely sure where you are or what it is that you do, but I really appreciate your presence. Let's get rid of that. Now I've lost my place entirely. I am going to go over to all things grandfather rights in just a second, but I do want to make sure I get everybody. Who still remembers Caterpillar Shake Hands with Danger videos? One of the funniest things I've ever seen. Funny and yet horrific. Yeah, it was yeah. I've seen that quite a few times over the years. I'm fairly sure actually it must be on YouTube. I've never looked, but I will go and have a look at that at some point. He forgot to say he licks the battery to check its power outage. That might explain your taste in pizzas and breakfast, Steve, if you're doing that sort of thing. Mick Norton says, Cat were giving out the same battery maintenance points when Moses left Dumbarton. Ah, yes, Moses of Dumbarton. Jim Turner says, morning, was having so much fun, I didn't realise it was gone 10. Poor excuse, but thank you anyway. Let's have a look at Justin. Carrigan is here all the way from the wilds of Awesome Earth Movies. Morning, Justin. Thank you very much indeed for being here. I've had a YouTube link in from Ken Hatcher. I can't play it. I don't know what it is, but Ken, thank you, I guess. Dan Cullen, morning, bit late, busy trying to get to grips with this bloody Hyundai 210. A headache every day. Jim Turner, question was 8, sausage or bacon cob? Yeah, see, now I said earlier that I'm a bacon man, but I do love me a sausage. Make of that what you will. Let's have a look. See, now, this is going to ruin my diet. Mick Norton, answer to the question of the day. A sarnie like a doorstep with Lurpak butter, black pudding and burnt bacon. Oh, couldn't you just? Excuse me a second. That's better. I want to go to breakfast with Mick Norton. Dan, you can be on a table on your own with your vegan sausage chips and bowl of porridge. Good Lord. I'm only worried about my bank balance in Las Vegas. Nick, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. But bear in mind that you are revered across the land. I'm sure somebody will buy you a spot of lunch. Even if it ends up being me, you'll be fine. Paramount Plus have a program on Vegas worth a watch called Aerial Cities. Let's have a look. Although, if I'm at the auctions, a cheeseburger with onions every time. The smell of cooking onions in the outdoors is really quite special. I am gonna go over to grandfather rights in just a second because we are at the half-hour mark. Just a very quick one. I bought a book. I bought many books over the years, but I bought a book specifically, and I wish I could remember what the book was called. But there was a journalist. I think he worked for the New York Times at the time that he wrote the book. And he'd been to Las Vegas for a convention. And late one night, he was walking back to his hotel and he saw people disappearing into the storm drains that run under the city. And he mentioned this to somebody the following day and said, there are people going to the storm drains. And basically they said, yeah, there are people living in the storm drains. So he went and met those people that live in the storm drains. By and large, they were largely Mexican and Puerto Rican immigrants who come to Las Vegas to work. So they are the waiting staff and the hotel porters and the laundry maids and that kind of thing that are working in these huge, luxurious hotels. And then when they finish their shift, they can't actually afford to live in a house in Las Vegas. So they live underground in a storm drain. And being a storm drain, it is a desert. It is in the Mojave Desert. Nevada doesn't have a great deal of rain, but when it does rain, it properly rains, and every once in a while the storm drains flood, and those people are basically washed out. And there is a. I wish I could remember the guy's name, but there's a guy that's quoted in the book, and he is one of those that lives in the underground storm drain. And the reporter that wrote the book actually sees him in a hotel. I think it may have been Caesar's Palace, but that may just be my imagination. But he sees him in Caesar's Palace, and as he's working, and he says, what are you doing up here? And he said, well, I'm working, and then I'm going to go back to the storm drain and everything else. And when they're talking, he said, if you look around this place, some of the people here are only just one or two minor mistakes away from living where I live. And he wasn't talking about gambling, he was talking about the fragility of modern life, on the fact that we had a guy in my previous house. We lived opposite a country park, and there was a guy sleeping rough there, a young guy, probably mid-30s, I guess. And he had worked for an IT company. IT company had made him redundant. As a result of the redundancy, his wife had kicked him out. And this guy, who had been very successful, company car, good job, suited and booted on his way to work, was now sleeping on a park bench. And this guy, as I say, in Las Vegas, living in a storm drain. And he said, some of these people are just a step or two away from being where I am. Steve says there was a program that also, remember seeing it, as behind the scenes, people live pretty poor. Yeah, and you certainly notice that. I mean, not so much with the real fancy schmancy hotels, so Caesars and the Bellagio. But certainly when you get down to, I'm staying at the Luxor, there'll be a fair contingent of Mexican migrant labour working there, and certainly in places like Circus, huge contingent of Mexicans. And when you look at the price of property and the prices of rental in Las Vegas, there's no way they can afford it on the wages that they're paid, and also bearing in mind a lot of people in the hospitality industry in the US basically rely on tips, and it's something that we kind of need to adjust to. When I go out for dinner, I think maybe 10-15% is plenty. In the States, you're talking 20, 30, 40% tips, because that's what keeps the waiting staff alive effectively. So bear that in mind on your travels. Now, I did say I was going to go over to grandfather rights, and I wasn't lying. Ignore the weird-looking fella at the top there. We posted... I'm just going to put this up because it's worth it. Here in Wakefield on a Saturday night, you'll regularly see people in close proximity to drains. Yes. Right. Okay. So, as you were aware, I took a clip of one of our earlier shows talking about the end of CSCS grandfather rights, and I posted it on LinkedIn. I'm not entirely sure quite what the figures are right now, but it's been viewed like 4,500 times, I think, and we've had a lot of comments, and I do think some of the comments are worth looking at. So if you'll bear with me, this one comes from Keith Fletcher, who is Tender and Projects Coordinator at Cleveland Cable Company, and he says, so I used to teach NVQ up to level 4 in a range of subjects. Each level brought with it two things: prerequisite requirements that meant that you must have a certain level in the field for the NVQ. Using IT as an example, this was core level maths and English for level 1, progressing through more IT related items as you went upwards. Prior experience which you could use to prove you were proficient against various modules and therefore didn't need to work on those. The simple solution, and this is the bit that was interesting, the simple solution would be for the NVQ to take into account the previous experience covered under CSCS. If you have a particular card you need for your job, then that card should cover that job as an NVQ. Perfect example of what could be done, but as I've responded to him, as you can probably see there is no money in simple solutions. Somebody stands to gain from this switch from CSCS as it stands to MVQ. Paul John Levy, who is a high-reach demolition operator at Connell Brothers up in the northwest of the country. After 40 years experience in demolition, you're told you cannot renew your card, which you need to get on site without paying for someone to reassess you again on-site assessment visits. All the training, on-site safety audits, and 40 years experience pushed to one side. Without this NVQ, you cannot renew your card. Therefore, they are saying you are not competent to do your job. Yeah, that's exactly what they're saying. I'm just going to mute this 1 second. Dear, oh dear. I apologise. I muted myself to clear my throat and then forgot to unmute. So let me go back to the point I was just making. So this is a comment from Gary Strickson, who is an experienced CCDO demolition supervisor. The law says nothing about NVQs or any other qualifications. I believe the wording is trained, competent and experienced. It's down to companies to stand by these people and say no to this. If you can prove the above criteria for your staff, surely they can continue in post. You would think the problem with it is this will be enforced internally by Tier 1 contractors, Build UK members, who will, come 2025, will insist upon an NVQ card. And if you're not packing an NVQ card, you won't be on site. Let's have a look. Mick Norton says, claiming the worth of prior learning for an NVQ against a CSCS card would never hold up in a court of law. And I think that's one of the issues we have here. I think a lot of this is down to effectively arse covering. You know, if something goes wrong on site and there is an investigation, somebody needs to be able to point at the latest form of training and competence, in this instance an NVQ, to be able to say, well, we're all above board. Darren and Greg, directors at Braxton Installations. Does it now mean that even a labourer who pushes a broom round has to sit an NVQ or equivalent to be allowed to push that broom? Is there a course for broom pushing? Money, licence, printer for some? I don't know if there is a course for a broom pusher, but guaranteed, if there was money to be had in it, a training organisation will sure as hell put one on. Here's a good question. This is from Brian Abbott, who is MD at Active Electrical Services, North East Limited. Does that mean that if they then have a CS, CS or ECS card, they are competent? Because if so, I'll be delighted. And that will then take all responsibility away from the employer to ensure competence. And if not, why the hell have them? Money, methinks. Money, methinks as well. Patrick Morby, I did mention this earlier, but I'm going to go back to it. Patrick Morby says, the construction trade is heading downhill. It's amazing that we've been classified with grandfather tickets and know they're worth nothing. As operators, we help the next generation of operators into this game, and we have done this for years. And now we're not qualified enough to, because of a money-making scheme, to squeeze the old operator out and bring in operators who have no site experience, but have the paperwork rather. It's a joke. It really is a joke. I'm not entirely sure of the rank and the profile of all the guys that are in the chat at the moment. But what would you rather have? Somebody that could prove they've been there, done it, got the t-shirt over 15, 20, 30 years, or somebody that's holding a piece of paper that said, I've been to college and I'm a digger driver? Who would you rather have working alongside you? I know which one I would be going for. It's an interesting point. I wouldn't be a digger up if it wasn't for my granddad. There's even an NVQ for goat herding and fence post construction. There are times when this becomes so ludicrous, it's hard to tell if somebody's actually joking. An NVQ, an NVQ in goat herding. I wonder if the goats respond in a different way if you're holding an NVQ card. Maybe if they looked at the skill of the ones with grandfather rights, this is Brian Cook, who is a crane driver. Maybe if they looked at the skills of the ones with the grandfather rights, they will see the vast majority of them learn their skills by doing a job and learning hands-on from someone who took the time to explain and show them how to do it in real-life circumstances. The problem today is they're taught how to pass a test at the end of the week and not how to do the job. Brian Cook, we are of one mind, sir. And this kind of reiterates what I was saying earlier. This is Glenn Price, who is at a building company, I don't know which. It's all about the paper trail when something goes wrong. There used to be accidents on site, but not anymore. All accidents are preventable. The safety of people on site is ultimately the responsibility of the site owners. So if they can prove that they had all the required paperwork in place, then it can't be their fault. The fact that you have untrained operatives with a CSCS card and a half-day course is of no consequence. And that right there is precisely the system that we have allowed to happen. That's progress, is it? Is it really? The more I think about it, as I say, I was talking for an hour and 10 minutes on this subject yesterday, just off the cuff. And the more I think about it, the more ludicrous the whole thing becomes. But I do think the point that we made, which I borrowed from one of the spokespeople over there, just trying to remember, Patrick Morby. Think about that for if. Let me start again. Let me just get my ducks in a row here. I've already mentioned the fact that we have a skill shortage. We're struggling to get young people into the industry. And we are, through the removal of grandfather rights, we are pushing people, experienced people, towards the exit. We've already seen examples of people saying that they intend not to renew their card because of the ludicrous system. They're going to take early retirement, or they're going to go and do something else. So we've got that situation. So we're going to end up with gaps. Not just gaps in the workforce, but gaps, and really, really sizable gaps in our ability to properly train people. As our friend Patrick Morby says, the way that things have traditionally worked is you get a young operator, he's buddied up with a more experienced operator who turns him into a proper operator. He might have a piece of plastic, but after 6 months or a year of working alongside a proper experienced operator, they will know the job better than somebody straight out of school. Excuse me 1 second. And I've unmuted it again this time. If some of those people that are more experienced are now urged towards the exit, when we do finally attract some more young people into the industry, who's going to do that? We are in danger of ending up with a workforce that has a piece of plastic to prove that they are competent, but who may possess no common sense whatsoever, and certainly no site savviness. And this is a system of our own making. One of the things that's come up numerous times on LinkedIn, and while I was speaking yesterday over on Instagram, is the fact that there is actually no legal requirement for any of this. This is a want rather than a need. This is being foisted upon us by CITB, Construction Leadership Council, and all the various levels of training organisations that sit below them. As an industry, my personal belief is that we should stand up and say, no. Not right now because of the cost of living crisis, but moreover, not at the moment because there is a bigger fish to fry here. We already have a shortage of people. Don't make it worse. And for the love of God, let's encourage those people that are most experienced, those that currently hold our grandfather rights, let's encourage them to stay around for as long as is humanly possible, so that when we do get young people joining the industry, they can learn the ropes by somebody that's been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Mick Norton has his sarcasm hat this morning. Anyone need MVQ level 2 in underwater basket weaving? I've already got mine, so I'm out. But if anybody else needs it, Mick's your man. Let's have a look. Jim Turner. Every walk of life is better taught in real-time way. Apprenticeships in every trade job is the best way to learn and earn. It absolutely is. I'm a one-trick pony, guys, and even my one trick isn't that great. But I went through a journalist training course at 20 years old, 21 years old or something like And when I left, I was told, you now have a job as a journalist. I don't think I became an actual journalist, one that I could proudly say, yeah, I'm a journalist, for another 3 years. By that time, I'd worked on a news desk, I'd worked on a features desk, and all points in between. So I ended up doing the rounds of the magazine. I worked on various different bits of it. It was a weekly magazine, so very, very intensive. Fast turnaround of copy and stories and photographs and everything else. That's how I knocked off the rough edges. When I left the journalist training course, I could write, but I wasn't a writer for another 3 years. That's the truth of the matter. And I think we have exactly the same thing here. You have a piece of paper that says, or a piece of plastic that says, you're a digger driver. You're not until you've been there and done it on a multitude of sites, in a multitude of applications, and proved your worth. Jim Turner says, change the rules for the new starters, not us old hands. I agree, 100%. We need to vent our spleen against the decision makers. And this was a key part of the discussion over on Instagram yesterday. How do you do that? How do you do that in this modern day and age? Was a time you'd have knocked on the door of your union representative and they would have gone into battle on your behalf. We don't have that anymore. So who are you going to call? It's not Ghostbusters. Who are you going to call? Who are you going to speak to? Who is going to fight your corner? And this, what we're talking about here is CSCS. So I realise I'm blurring the lines in order to deliver this analogy, but here's the thing, right? So I realise in Demolition we have CCDO cards. This is not CSCS. But bearing in mind the way that the system works, if we were talking about a change that would require an NVQ against a CCDO card, would an organisation like the NFDC be willing to stand and fight the corner of their members, more specifically the workers within those members, or would they look at it and go, well, we'll probably get some grant funding from the CITB in order to make the switch, and then we'll be able to make £250 for each NVQ that we deliver. Do we really want to fight this, or do we want to rake in the cash? And while that is the situation, why would they actually fight for it? How many employers would honestly accept a construction NVQ as part of a CV submission? I don't know the answer to that. I grew up around an industry in which CVs, I wouldn't say CVs didn't exist. That's an overstating the point. But a lot of it was a phone call to your previous employer. Is this guy reliable? Is he likely to nick the scrap off my site? Am I good to employ him? No? Okay then, bosh, game over. Whereas now it's CVs and it's LinkedIn profiles and it's pieces of plastic with a little chip on them that says that you've sat a training course. I mentioned this yesterday on LinkedIn again. I got a grade B O-level in mathematics. Didn't make me a mathematician. Truth be told, I remember virtually nothing of my maths education. Never needed it because I've got a calculator. In fact, I've got a calculator on my phone, which is forever with me. I have no need whatsoever for mathematics. That grade B O-level did not make me a mathematician, in the same way that a piece of plastic doesn't make somebody a dozer driver. It doesn't. It's proved that they can pass a test. That's it. That's all there is. And yet, as an industry, we are signing up to enormous expense, enormous hassle. Despite all that we've said about the fact that this is a demand from the very top tier of the industry, how many tier 1 contractors are going to be happy to allow NVQ assessors onto their sites to assess the viability of a subcontractor? We have an instance, or we have a regular issue here in the demolition industry. All the major contractors, the Balfour Beatties and the Kias and the Macy's, they all want our high reach operators to be highly trained and highly qualified. Can we do some training on your site? Not on your Nelly. That never darken our doorstep with your training nonsense. Go away and do it in a field, which is not like a demolition site in any way, shape or form, but at least you'll come back with a bit of plastic that says you're trained. 'Tis nonsense, I tells you. 'Tis nonsense. And I genuinely do not need, I do not know where the industry goes from here. It has time. As I said, the final cut-off, assuming we can't get some sort of stay of execution, is December 2024. So we've got the best part of 2 years to rally against what I consider to be a lunatic decision. Will the industry do it? I don't believe so. We allowed the government to pull the rug from under us on red diesel with barely a whimper, and I honestly believe we'll do exactly the same thing again. I'd like to be proven wrong, and I did say to the people on Instagram yesterday, I'm not a spokesperson for the industry. I'm not the voice of the industry. Never claimed to be. But if using this platform, our Instagram platform, our Facebook platform, if we can use all of that to rally people behind actually fighting this, the door is open. The platform is yours to use. Say the word, and we'll see what we can do. It's the best I can do. I will keep on airing it. My concern is if I keep on airing it, I tend to end up talking to the same people time and time again. But if you do know of anyone that's likely to be impacted by this, an older operator, for example, let them know that this show exists. Get them to come along. Maybe. I'm just thinking this out loud. I wonder if we should be doing maybe an evening show dedicated entirely to this, and maybe get a few grandfather rights holding card operators actually on the show to get their thoughts, and maybe get some thoughts from the audience on what we might do to combat this. I'll give that some thought, and please, you give it some thought as well. If you think that's a good idea, then let me know, and we'll see what we can do. That is nearly an hour, people. It's been an absolute pleasure, as it always is. I'll be back here again tomorrow. We're already over the hump, so we're working down towards the weekend now. I'll be back here again on tomorrow, 10 a.m. for the Breakfast Show. But until then, everybody, have a fantastic day. It looks like the sun's shining out here, actually, so I may go and top up my vitamin D levels before I do anything else. I'm just going to do this very quickly. Mick Norton says, 30 years ago, the MVQ was a true measure of an individual's competence. Then along came funding and a gravy boat for unscrupulous MVQ centres to churn out a plant operator level 2 in 1 day. Yes, become a plant operator in 1 day. I did a week. Not an MVQ, but I did a week of training with JCB many moons ago, and I am a horrible operator. I actively tell manufacturers, for the love of God, do not give me the keys to a machine, because I will embarrass myself and quite possibly destroy your machine. And I had a week's training, one-on-one training, I might add, and yet we can get a plant operator level 2 in 1 day. This apparently is progress. People, go have a good day. Take care of yourselves, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. I'll see you tomorrow. Until then, all the best.